Hi, I'm Sam and this is Kiara, and you're watching Wild Encounters with the BC Wildlife Park. So Kiara is a species of snake known as a ball python, although in other parts of the world, these animals are more commonly referred to as royal pythons, and this has to do with their scientific name. So the scientific name, or the Latin name, of ball pythons, or royal pythons, is Python regius, or regius, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And that literally translates to English as royal python. So it's thought that these animals were worn as jewelry by royalty in Africa. So one story states that the Egyptian pharaoh Cleopatra would wear these animals around her wrists as bracelets. Whether that story's true or not is up to you to decide. So in North America, we more commonly refer to these animals as ball pythons, and that has to do with a certain behavior that they exhibit. So when these animals are threatened by predators, or something that wants to eat them, the ball python reacts by curling itself into a ball. So it coils its body around its head because its head contains all of its vital organs, its most important things, its brain, its eyes, its nose, mouth, everything that the ball python does not want to get bitten or eaten by a predator. So when that predator goes to attack the ball python, it will just be biting or attacking the outer body. So ball pythons are a very popular pet amongst exotic pet owners, so they can be found outside of their native habitats and ranges, like for example in British Columbia. So you won't find these naturally in the wild here in Canada. Instead, they are native to Western and Central Africa. So they're found just north of the equator from about from Senegal to South Sudan. So their habitat in the wild ranges from grasslands, forests, open forests, pastures, and croplands, so they can be found in areas that have been cleared for farming. These animals are also found next to bodies of water and even underground in burrows, hiding from the heat of the day. So most often these animals will not be active right at the daytime or at night. They are actually active at twilight, and so the special word that we use is crepuscular. So that means an animal that is active during dawn or dusk. There are actually many different ways that scientists can categorize an animal's sleeping habits. For example, there are crepuscular animals like the ball pythons that we just talked about. Many species of snakes are crepuscular. So the benefits of being active at dusk and dawn mainly involve temperature. Twilight usually provides a nice, comfortable range for an animal to be active. It's not too hot and it's not too cold for these animals to hunt and forage. And most of these animals do have eyesight that is adapted for lower levels of light. Other examples of crepuscular animals include rabbits, deer, and cats. Crepuscular animals can be further categorized into matutinal animals, which are active at dawn, and vespertine animals, which are active at dusk. Now, when dusk fully fades into night, that's when nocturnal animals come out to play. So examples of nocturnal animals include bats and owls. Nocturnal animals are truly adapted for life in the dark. These animals have highly developed senses. They hear better, they smell better, they even see better in the dark. Less competition is a major benefit for being nocturnal. Nocturnal animals don't have to worry as much about competing with other animals for food because most of those animals are asleep at night. So the animals that sleep at night and are active at day are called diurnal. Humans are a great example of diurnal animals. Diurnal animals don't have to have specialized senses to help them get around because the sun provides all the light that they need to see. Now, when we compare Kiara to other snake species that are found here in British Columbia, she definitely seems much more impressive, given her noticeably bigger size. Definitely outweighs and outmeasures all of our native snake species. But when we compare these snake species to other snake species of Africa, these animals do not compare. So the largest snake species in Africa is actually the African rock python. And these animals are found in sub-Saharan Africa, and they measure in at over 3 meters in length, so about 10 to 13 feet, whereas ball pythons in comparison are about 1/3 of the size, about 1 meter in length, so are about 4 feet in length. So if we want to talk about the world's longest snake, we would be looking at the reticulated python. And that animal is found in South and Southeastern Asia, and it measures in at over 9 meters in length. That's almost 30 feet. It is a very, very long snake. But if we're talking about the world's heaviest snake, then we have to be looking at the green anaconda. And this animal is found in South America, and it weighs up to 250 kilograms or 550 pounds. It is a gigantic snake, very, very heavy. When we look at Kiara, her colors are very typical for her species. She has these dark markings and lighter markings interspersed with these darker spots. So very typical of a wild ball pythons. And they also have these yellow markings that will extend from their face across their eyes, and also ivory colored bellies. However, these animals have been bred in the pet trade to exhibit many different colors, so we call these colors color morphs. Breeding the ball pythons for these color morphs is called artificial selection, or selective breeding. So selective breeding involves choosing parents with certain traits to produce offspring that hopefully have inherited those traits. So these color morphs that we see in the pet trade usually won't arise in wild ball pythons. Most of the colors of ball pythons that we see in the pet trade actually wouldn't be very good camouflage for these animals, so they wouldn't survive very long in the wild. Now, color morphs can range in a whole variety of different colors, a whole rainbow of them, and they have some very interesting names. So you get colors like spider, banana, purple passion, or champagne. When we look at the difference between male and female snakes, it's kind of interesting and opposite in what we would see in mammals. So for ball pythons, the females are actually larger in size than the males. Now when we look at mammals, males are generally larger than the females, and this has to do with protecting their territory and protecting their mates and fighting with other males in order for dominance. But when we look at ball pythons and other snake species, females generally tend to be bigger. Now, it's thought that the reason for the larger size is that it increases the female's ability to hunt, which is very important. She will need lots of energy in order to protect her young, or when she is brooding, her clutch of eggs. Now, another difference between males and females is that male ball pythons in the wild are generally more vulnerable to ticks. And it's thought that the reason is because females will be more stationary during the 2 months of when they are protecting their clutch. Not every snake species will incubate their eggs. Some snake species will find a safe hidden space to dig a nest and then deposit their eggs and then leave, whereas other snake species like many boas incubate their eggs inside them and then give birth to live young. So breeding season for these animals begins in mid-September to mid-November. The female will then lay her eggs from mid-February to early April, and she'll lay about 1 to 11 eggs. And when she lays those eggs, the eggs will actually stick all together in one big clump. So then the female then coils around her clutch, her eggs, to keep them warm, and then they will hatch in about 2 months. So when the eggs are ready to hatch, they will actually unstick from each other, and then the baby ball python will slit its way out of the egg with its egg tooth. The egg tooth is a vital structure that many reptile species and birds have when they are first born. So it's not actually a tooth, it's a small sharp protrusion on the end of the reptile or bird's nose or beak. And it's sharp enough to help the animals break through or cut its shell when it is hatching. So this structure isn't permanent, so you don't usually see adults with it. Female ball pythons will reach maturity around 27 to 31 months. Males, on the other hand, will mature a bit faster, from 16 to 18 months. They have a lifespan of about 10 years in the wild, although pet owners will report ball pythons living to be about 20 years, and some people have reported ball pythons living to be over 50 years old. Now, keep in mind, if you think ball pythons are really cool and you want one as a pet, they can live for a very long time. And owning reptiles is a bit different from owning a cat or a dog. They require a lot of special equipment, which can be expensive to get started, and also they require a very specific diet. Ball pythons are carnivores. In the wild, they eat almost exclusively rodents, lots of small mammals. Mammals are rodents like grass mice, African giant rats, black rats, rufous-nosed rats, and shaggy rats. I bet you never knew there were so many species of rats. Now, an interesting thing to note about these animals is they don't need to feed every day, and this is because they are ectotherms. Now, you've probably heard this term referred to as cold-blooded. And what this means is that they do not regulate their body temperature. Instead, they rely on the environment to keep themselves warm or to cool themselves off. So what does this have to do with feeding? Well, because they don't need to expend energy on their metabolism to keep themselves warm, this means they need less energy to function, so they don't need as much food to survive. And in fact, some snakes can go months without eating. So in order to hunt their food, they are not venomous animals, so they don't have any venomous fangs in them. Instead, they are constrictor snakes. And even more, they are ambush predators. So what this means, instead of actively pursuing their prey, they will hide in the tall grass until a prey comes to them. So a nice big tasty rat comes to them. And then they will surprise that prey by striking out from the grass very quickly. They will bite it, grab onto their prey, and they can't swallow it immediately, or what they will do is they will constrict it. So what this means is they will wrap their body around their prey, squeeze it very tightly to subdue it, and then they will swallow it whole. These animals use a mixture of visual and chemical cues to hunt. Now, because they are crepuscular, they're not going to be relying as much on their visual cues in the sense of seeing images. Instead, they have adapted to see something more than images, and that is heat. So these animals can actually see infrared, and they do this with the help of a special organ on their face called a pit organ. Now, she has a whole bunch of holes in her face, and it looks like she has a whole bunch of nostrils. But those are actually the pit vents or the pit organs, and they help her see when things are hotter or colder. In terms of status and conservation, in 2010, these animals were labeled by the IUCN, so the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, as a species of least concern. So this means that they are not currently at risk of being endangered or threatened, and there are no current conservation efforts because they are not currently endangered. However, a recent report in 2020 saw that these animals are actually one of the most exported live animals from Africa. Now remember, they are part of the pet trade, so many of ball pythons are being exported from Africa yearly. And so future generations may be at risk from overhunting or illegal trade. So although ball pythons are a constrictor snake, they are not related to boas. They're different species. So pythons are what we call old world species. They're generally found in countries like in Africa and in Asia. New world species, like most boas, well actually boas can be new world or old world species. Anyways, new world species can be found in North America or South America. Now, there is one particular python species that is found in North America, and this python species is called the Burmese python, and it's found in Florida. Now, that animal shouldn't be there. The Burmese python is a very big snake, and it is actually an invasive species in the Florida Everglades. And every year it is decimating the native populations of animals in the Florida Everglades. And it gets so big it can even eat alligators. So it's a very big snake. So what's it doing there? Well, just like ball pythons who are kept as pets, some Burmese pythons had been kept as pets and somehow escaped or were illegally released into the wild. So it's always very important before you get an exotic species, know what you're going to be dealing with. So if you like ball pythons, make sure you do your research, and please do not release any animal into the wild because they might become an invasive species and might grow up to eat alligators, and that wouldn't be a good thing. If you want to learn more about ball pythons, come visit us at the BC Wildlife Park. I'm Sam and this is Kiara, and hope to see you soon.